All right. I'm going to keep reiterating this over and over again. Generally speaking, there's 4 types of methods. Constructor, covered that in one video. Setters, those are going to set attributes. Getters, that's going to get attributes or get information from an object. And print methods or doer methods, and we'll see those in a bit. This video is going to be about setter methods. And a setter method means we're going to change an attribute within that object. Now, if you remember, I'll go up to my GURPS information, and we set a whole bunch of things. We created character first name, character last name, player first name, player last name, starting points, what do you call it? Strength, intelligence, dexterity, health. Now, if we begin to really examine this game, we need to really look at the bigger picture. And I'm not so concerned about GURPS and you learn this stuff like that, but one of the interesting things about GURPS is these basic attributes will actually affect secondary attributes. There's different formulas and different calculations. So we just can't go running into changing the attributes associated with the basic attributes, setting the values. For example, a real quick value. One of the secondary attributes is called basic lift, and basic lift is determined by, if we see right here, basic lift is determined by strength times strength divided by 5. So we want to be careful about our setters, especially as our programs get more and more complex, because changing the value in one area will have effects in values in other areas. So we're going to keep our particular environment really simple. We are just going to set attributes that we know aren't going to have that big of an impact for these initial videos. So I'm going to go back to my Replit, and here's our constructor class. I'm going to create a couple, dramatic pause, I'm going to create a couple setter methods. I'm going to do a copy and paste, so from one screen to another screen, so we don't have to see my poor typing skills. And I created 4 setter methods. The first one is set the character's first name. Second one is set the character's last name. Third one is set the player's first name. And the last one is set the player's last name. Let's say we have a situation where I'm creating these characters and they're just not that exciting, or their names aren't that exciting, or maybe I give a character to a friend or something like that. We're going to go to the assumption, for our particular example, these particular attributes are not going to have any effect within the character. So they're pretty safe. As setters go, they're pretty safe attributes. So I'm going to say, you know what? Alice November, that particular character, that's a boring last name. She's a swordsman. She wields a broadsword. So I'm going to change her last name to, now we go back, we have this setter class right here, set character last name. So I'm going to say Alice November. Her last name, we're not going to change the actual object's name, but we're going to change the content of the object. Understand that. We're not changing the content. It'll always be Alice November. We're going to change the attribute. And we're going to say for Alice, dot notation, set character last name. And we're going to send that to Mighty Sword. All right. So the actual object is still going to be referred to as Alice November, but the attribute within the object will now be Alice Mighty Sword. And if I print Alice November dot character spell it right, last name. What we should see is we should see the first time it runs before the change, we should see November. And then after the change, we should see the new change. I'm going to do the same thing for Bob. But for Bob, I'm going to change the last name. Bob wants to be a Bowman, right? So we're going to say Bob, Oscar, dot, and what set character last name, and we're going to pass it an argument. We'll just call it Bowman and do the exact same thing. Print it. So let's review this. We created an initial character, Alice November. I'm the owner, 25, and we're going to print it. And then at one point, we're now going to change that character's last name. So we should see Alice, Mighty Sword. And we do the same thing for Bob. We create Bob. We're going to create Bob, and then we're going to print the information associated with Bob, very rudimentary. And then we're going to set or change that character's last name. We're going to change it to Bowman, and then we're going to print it out. Have I typed everything correctly? Let's run this. There we go. So we can see that Alice changed from November to Mighty Sword, and Bob changed his last name from Oscar to Bowman. Constructors build the object. Setters change an attribute in that object. Getters get attribute or get information from that object. They don't have to always get the attribute. And then a print or a doer method. Now, let's go back real quickly to GURPS. Again, I want to be careful. How come I didn't create a setter method to change the values of strength, dexterity? Because they're a little bit more complicated than that. They're not just go in there and change the value, because once you establish a character, talking a little GURPS here, once we establish a character, we just can't go in there and change the value. Either we have to increment it by 1, decrement it by 1, and that's going to have effects on secondary values. So once we instantiate the object, once we create the object, then we have to play by the GURPS rules. And the GURPS rules says you can change the username all you want. You can change the character name all you want. But once you start changing the strength, the dexterity, that's a special situation. So when we get into a little bit more advanced videos, we're going to have to take that in consideration. So for right now, we're just going to create a series of setter objects that can change the character's name or change the player's name. So that being said, let's go on and learn something.